right. Let's go to Matthew chapter 5 this morning. Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5. Being just a couple of familiar verses. We've read these before many times. I know you have. I have heard them all my life. But you hear me say this often, that as a little kid growing up in church, and there was a lot of things that I heard that just seemed kind of strange to me, the way it was worded, and like I didn't understand it. It was just something that was, but I didn't understand what it meant. And then the older you get, you're like, oh, okay, that's what it meant. And then you get older again, and then you're like, I don't know if it meant that or not. And then you get older some more, and you're like, oh, okay. Now I understand more about what it meant. And this is one of those things. You know, preaching is one of those things that it's really, once again, the older that I get and the more that I invest thought into trying to explain to people who don't know the Lord the importance of preaching, or the necessity of it, how preaching helps you. How it helps you. I have conversations with people pretty regular that have no use for church. They have no use for preaching. Matter of fact, it's almost like wasting your breath to try to convince them that preaching is something that fills a need in your life. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes I wonder how many times I've sat and listened to preaching. How many times I have heard a preacher stand up and preach a sermon in my life. I would dare say thousands of times. I know it is. All you got to do is just look at a calendar and count up the Sundays and Wednesdays, and then there's a bunch more in between there. I mean, I've listened to a lot of preaching. Sometimes I get to thinking, man, I've done heard everything there is to preach on. I've done heard it 10 times. And there's some truth to that. I've heard these verses preached on many times. But the thing is that I don't remember what I had for lunch last week. And neither do you. Unless you're one of those people that take pictures of your food before you eat them. And we're just human beings forget. There's an old song they used to sing called Remind Me, Dear Lord. You remember that song? Roll back the curtain of memory now and then. Show me where you brought me from, where I could have been. Why? Because I'm human, and humans forget. And that's what we do. So preaching fills a needed vacancy in our life. And when you don't avail yourself of it because you feel intellectually superior, or you feel like you don't need it, or you feel like you already know those things and all that kind of stuff, you're cheating yourself. The Lord has something for us in the preaching of His Word, even if you've heard it before. There's a verse that says a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold and pictures of silver. Well, there's times, it's like having a tool. You can go to the store and they sell thousands and thousands of dollars worth of tools that you could buy and never use except one time. But that time comes along where you need that tool and you have it, it makes all the difference in the world. And it's that way with this too. The Lord sends you what you need in preaching. Preaching is one of those things that, Jesus, that's what He did. He preached a lot in His ministry. He just went around preaching. John the Baptist went about preaching. The apostles went everywhere they went preaching. And it's neat to me because, like I said, I've listened to a lot of different preachers preach. I've heard preachers who are as unique. I mean, they were a one-off. You'll never find another man that preached like Earl Hughes, for example. one of a kind. But, you know, and it's sad to me because a lot of people regarded him almost like a religious novelty. Because he was different. He wasn't your status. He wasn't a broom handle preacher. He was very different in the way he preached. But, so much wisdom and so much good there that there was if you could get past that. And I've seen preachers get up that try to preach like other preachers that they know. And how not only offensive, but just, or the kids call it now, cringy. You get up and I've watched young men get up and try to emulate and imitate older preachers that they idolize. Their body language, the way they talk, the cadence of their words, their movements and everything else, and it's just contrived. So there's preaching that is performance, and then there's preaching that is anointed. And it's sanctioned, so to speak, by the Holy Spirit. You know, you got to think about the environment that Jesus began preaching in when he started his ministry. And what had been going on for so many centuries, really. 400 years of darkness and religious darkness, because there was plenty of religion to go around, but it was all different. It was dark. It was oppressive. It was enslaving. And Jesus come along preaching. And here's the thing. You know, chapter 5, Matthew chapter 5, everybody knows it is the Sermon on the Mount. And when they, you know, what was, somebody commented later in the scriptures there about Jesus preaching, they said, never a man spake like this one. Some people said these things are too hard for us. I mean, there was varying opinions on what he preached and how he preached. But one thing that you can say about his preaching that carries through to today is, his preaching was different. You know, he packed a lot of things into his preaching. But the one thing that they collectively were designed to do, his sermons, as it were, is the same thing that the preaching of the Word is still supposed to do today. And that is to provoke the hearer to think about what's being said. I mean, you ever wonder what the purpose of preaching is? I mean, there's people that go to church and listen to preaching because the bell rung and it's Sunday. Or it's Wednesday and it's 7 o'clock and you just got to go and just listen to the hammer fall over and over and over. And then you go home and you listen to preaching. But it's meant to be intentional. Preaching should be intentional. You know, it should be done with purpose and intention. Instead of just, you ever listen to a preacher get up and preach, air quotes there, and the only thing he's saying is just one-liners that he's wrote down from 100 other sermons that he's heard, and they just kind of, none of it makes, they're not relevant to each other in anything. It's just, he filled up 30 or 45 minutes just saying like religious hyperbole. You ever heard somebody, and they throw in a lot of filler words like hallelujah, amen, bless God, and all this stuff, and it's just, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of his time. It's a waste of your time too. And it's sad because it's an opportunity wasted to have people that are gracious enough to come and listen to a man preach and take time out of their life to come and listen to him preach. And nothing. It's just a waste of time. Oh, it's criminal. You know, preaching ought to make you meditate on the subject matter and to make you ask yourself the hard questions. That's really what it is. A preacher can stand up here and just shoot right down the gun barrel at you. But the thing is, really, what needs to happen is that there should be a takeaway. You ought to go home and think about what he said. Because you're the only person that will be honest with you at the end of the day. You have to be honest with yourself. We talk about that a lot. If you'll be honest with yourself, then you can deal in truth. But that's what this is about. Preaching that gets up and asks a bunch of softball questions and then answers those questions for you is almost always ignored completely. But when a preacher gets up and presents you with the truth and asks you, presents it in a way that you go away and you think about it, then you're going to ask yourself some questions. I think that's why the noise of the world is so very loud now, is because it has to drown out your thoughts, the questions you ask yourself. See, that's what the Lord wants you to do. David said in his law, what does it say? I meditate day and night. Blessed is the man that delights in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. Well, why? How would you do that? Well, you got to think about what's being preached. You got to think about what you read in this book. The Holy Spirit doesn't have anything to work with in you if you don't have those components. And then there's got to be some quiet. So Jesus poses two questions in these verses in Matthew chapter 5 verse 29. We'll start there and we'll read two verses here. Jesus said this, and if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out and cast it from thee. Can you imagine what people thought when they heard him say, if your right eye offends you, pull it out and throw it away? My own eye? He can't be serious. The high priest and the Pharisees don't say things like this to us when they're reading the Torah. What's up with that? They don't say things like this in the synagogue. What does he mean? Do I really have to pull out my eye and throw it away? He said, cast it from thee, for it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell. And he went on to say, if thy right hand offend thee, cut it off, and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell. I wonder what they thought when they heard him say that. I mean, if preaching is supposed to provoke you to think, and it's supposed to shake you out of your sleep and the dull droning of someone's voice and the boredom of just the same old noise. If a man got up and said something like that, I imagine everybody perked up and said, what is he talking about? Is he serious? Is he being metaphoric? Is he being literal? What's the deal? What do you mean? Does it mean if I pull my own eye out, I won't go to hell? If I cut my hand off, I won't go to hell? He was making a point. It made them have to think. That's my whole point. Jesus poses two questions in these verses that seem kind of strange. Does your eye offend you? Does your hand offend you? Well, I imagine if I'd have been sitting there, my first thought would have been, well, of course, my own members don't offend me. Other people offend me. Wouldn't you say that that is something that is a pretty common thing amongst most people's perception of others nowadays? I don't offend me at all. If there's one person in this world that I know is where he's supposed to be, it's me. I don't offend me. It's the other people in the world I have to worry about offending me, making me mad, aggravating me, getting under my skin, rubbing me the wrong way, ruining my world, as it were. Just like the slow pokes you get behind every single time you leave your house. Sometimes I set a timer just to see how long it's going to take when I leave my house before I wind up behind somebody going 5 or 10 under the speed limit on a work day. That's because that's their prerogative, I guess. But see, that's how everybody thinks about everything. Everybody goes out the door in the morning with a chip on their shoulder as to who's going to offend me today. They never consider the fact that you could offend you today. Well, it all starts off with the wrong idea of what offend even means. You know, if you say, If somebody comes up to me and says, makes fun of me for being bald, would that offend me? Well, that's people's idea of offend, is that someone cuts you off or goes slow in front of you or insults your looks or your intelligence or your social status or whatever. But offend, this is what it means. To offend means to attack or to assail, which means to plan to attack you and then go about making it happen. To displease, to make angry, to affront. That means to confront someone to their face. It expresses rather less than to make angry, and without any modifying word, it is nearly synonymous with displease. We are offended by rudeness, incivility, and harsh language. Well, there's that. So do you offend yourself with harsh language or rudeness? Well, of course not. Used to work with a guy, and he sang silly, stupid songs he'd make up. And one of his songs started out saying, "I love myself, I think I'm grand. When I'm by myself, I hold my hand," he said. Oh, yeah, he had a high opinion of himself. He didn't offend him. Everybody else offended him. Jesus said, "Does your eye offend you? Does your hand offend you?" Well, that made everybody say, "Well, what in the world is he talking about? I don't offend me, but he offends me. They offend me. The Romans offend me. This enslavement, this captivity offends me. Taxes offend me. But I sure don't offend me. I would never consider myself to be the offender against myself." No one does. We only ever think of the offense in the context of other people or other things offending or being offensive against or towards us. In the forms of insults and humiliations and personal attacks, most all of our efforts are defensive efforts against what we fear could happen if we don't get out in front of somebody offending us. You ever have to deal with somebody that, like I said, they just have a chip on their shoulder all the time? You got to be careful what you say around them or to them, because they might take offense to it. Or, matter of fact, they might just be offensive to you or mean to you because you hit them before they hit you. Mentality, you understand? Man, it's impossible to deal with someone like that. It's just, what those people wind up being is alone. They just walk alone. Nobody ever trusts them. They don't have many friends. They don't have any friends, really. I'm talking about this morning, what I'm talking about is my biggest problem. That's what the title of the message is, My Biggest Problem. My biggest problem is me. Your biggest problem is you. We all have that to deal with first. We need to deal with the biggest problem first. I need to deal with myself. You need to deal with yourself. How many times have you that have had children growing up, and one of them gets up in the morning and they're just, as the old saying goes, just up on the wrong side of the bed. Just comes out and everybody's running that way and they're running this way. Just crossways with everything. They're just cross. No reason. It's a beautiful morning, got a good breakfast, going to have a good day, except there's just one that's just sideways to everything. Well, you can manipulate their environment to control that situation, but they'll not change their mentality about the day until they change it. You can whoop them, you can punish them, you can deprive them, you can isolate them, you can do whatever you want to them, and temporarily resolve the issue, but you're not going to change their mind about the day, and you're not going to do that. You ain't going to do it for them when they're a little child, no more than you'll do it for an adult that you walk the world with. And, it's one of the I feel, the misconceptions of correction when it comes to kids is that if you make them do things, then they'll grow up and do those things. Why is the world full of people that grew up with good parents and good raising, and then they grow up to be reprobates? Well, because they never made themselves have to deal with themselves. They were just managed until they weren't your problem no more. And I've found myself in that situation as a parent even. And, there's the things you can do to encourage the situation in the right way, but every person has to make their choice. Children are to be instructed and taught how to do that themselves. They're going to have to one of these days. And as much as you'd like to do it for them, you're not going to get to do that. You got to deal with the biggest problem in your life first, every day, and that's you. There's another scripture in the Bible where another thing Jesus was preaching about, and the words mote and beam were involved. He said you need to pull the beam out of your own eye before you try to get the mote out of your brother's eye. Well, who was the problem in that situation? The guy trying to do some good had a bigger problem of his own than the other guy did that he was trying to help. He hadn't dealt with himself first. In dealing with this matter, Jesus mentions two specific problem areas for us to deal with, and that's the eyes and the hands. He said, does your eye offend you? Pluck it out and throw it away. Does your hand offend you? Cut it off. Throw it away. Why didn't he say, if your tongue offends you, pull it out and throw it away? Seems to me like that would solve a lot more problems than my eye or my hand, don't you think? Well, think about it for a minute. See, this is what I'm talking about preaching, making you think. You got to use some reasoning when you hear things like what Jesus said here in this. He wanted people to think about what he was saying and use some of their own intellect, to think about it and think it through. Does your tongue offend you? Absolutely not. It offends other people. Does my eye offend other people? No, but it can offend me. Offend means, don't let me get ahead of myself. Why didn't he? Okay, consider who he was talking about offending, though. He wasn't talking about offending other people. He was talking about you. Does your eye offend you? Does your hand offend you? See, we look at other people and say, the things that you do offend me. And so we want to cut them off and throw them far from us. And then that solves the problem, right? Modern culture calls it what? Cancel culture. You're dead to me. I X you out. I cut you from my life. People do this to their children. People do this to their parents. People do this to people that love them. Because they think that solves the problem. The hand that's trying to help them out of the hole they're in, they'll cut it off and throw it away. Jesus said, don't worry about other people's hands, worry about yours. Don't worry about other people's eyes, worry about yours. Ain't nobody needs to know my business. People looking into your life, wanting to know what's going on. People hate living in a small community because everybody knows everybody's business. So they want to take those eyes and pluck them out and throw them away so nobody knows what they're doing. Because it offends them. Jesus said, your eye will offend you. Your hand is what offends you, not other people's. He's dealing with the eyes and the hands. He said, think about it. Think about how he said that your eyes and your hands offend you. The things that we see, the things that we allow into our minds, where do they come through? Our eyes. Yes, we listen to things, but anymore, we're a visual learning society. There is a visual attached to every piece of information that we absorb now. It's almost a handicap. Because I like to go into thrift stores and look for old books. You want to know what they don't have in them? Pictures. Wonder why that is? Well, because they use that space to actually articulate proper English Words that described in detail exactly what they were wanting you to learn. Instead of showing you a picture that was just the illustration that somebody was able to draw of an idea of what they were trying to help you understand. If you don't believe that it's affected your life, try to put up, for example, a set of sliding glass shower doors with the instructions that are sent. There's a lot of words to them. There's some pictures, but they're not really descriptive. And you'll do like I do, and you'll take pictures of them with your phone and then blow them up so you can try to see what they were talking about. We're visual learners. Everything that we absorb, most all of it comes through our eyes. And you ultimately are the person who allows whatever comes into your mind through your eyes, you allow that to be. You're the one that says yes or no. You're the one that opens the door or shuts the door. You make the choice. And if you're not careful, most of what we see anymore will offend you. It attacks you. It affronts you. It assaults your mind. It assaults the truth that is in there. It assaults the conscience that God put in your soul. And it offends it. He said, if your eye offends you, pluck it out. Did he mean that if you're blind, if you pull your eyes out, then you're safe? No, he was talking about you controlling that part of your life. Your eyes. He said, your hands. Now I want you to think about it. If your eyes and your hands are the only two things he talked about. Now think about it. Your eyes. We just said that you learn. Most everything you learn through your eyes. What influences the way you think, what we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks, about the way that you think, the things that you let in, that then in turn affects the way you reason, the way you process thought, the amount of time that you will allot to thinking about stuff even. That all is regulated by what you let into your mind through your eyes. Well, what happens with these things right here, these hands, once you sit and think about something? I'm a fairly creative person. And one of my favorite things about carving or building or anything like that is that I will think. I'll see something, it inspires thought. And then I think about it, and then I think about rearranging it and then doing something different to it, and da-da-da-da-da. And then, after a while, these things get involved. And I go get a chainsaw or a skill saw or a hammer or an axe or whatever it is, or a knife and whittle. And then I start working on it. And before long, I have sitting there what was in here. I enjoy that. It scratches an itch for me that nothing else does. Because that was in my head, and now it's there, and I can pick it up and carry it around. And I don't know. It fascinates me that God made us in a way that we work that way. I believe it's sort of a dim reflection of his image in us because he's creative. He creates it. He created everything. And it's part of his nature is that he's creative. He's not a dull person. He is, and even in the most God-denying, God-hating person that ever draws a breath on this earth, there's a certain element of that in them, and they can't do anything about it except just make stuff. And whether they like it or not, it's a reflection of their Creator. But what you let in through these eyes, before long, your hands will become involved in that. Okay? And then they do stuff. They make things. They do stuff that affects other people's lives. So, wouldn't you say that what you let in through your eyes can then control this tongue too? Well, of course. You know, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. And, you know, it's pretty telling because people can claim a position in this life, but then their mouth says other things, and you know what they are. Their words will betray them. And so, the eyes and the hands. If your eye offends you, pluck it out, throw it away. If your hand offends you, what did he mean by that? Well, he said, if the things that you look at, or that you read, or that you watch, or that you allow to let in the gate to the soul, the eyes, you let that in, he said, if that is something that's a problem for you, then you're going to have to deal with it. You are going to have to deal with it. And he said, it's not going to be a pleasant thing. Everybody acts like self-discipline. See, they talk about disciplining children. And I believe that the word discipline is a very one-lane type of word. Discipline is for you. Correction is for children. But discipline is something you do to yourself. You can't make someone else be disciplined. You can't. You can control their environment and they have to perform like you, but they're not disciplined. You know? You're the only one that can enforce discipline on you. And that's the thing Jesus was talking about here. He said, if your eye offend you, you pluck it out. Don't go to somebody else and say, you're going to have to help me. Here, take my phone. No. You're going to have to pluck that eye out. If your hands offend you, you're going to have to do something about it. No one else can do it for you. Cut it off. Pluck it out. Don't you think that's a little excessive? Well, it sounds excessive. But you know you. I tell you what, I know me. And I know what it takes for me to actually commit to something. And I'm just going to tell you right now, it's harder than anything that you'll ever do. Disciplining yourself. You know, it's funny because I see people who are like, for example, take a bodybuilder, for example. I don't think people realize how it's more than just nerding out on chemistry in order to know just what your body needs in order to look like that. No, they make it their entire world. They weigh every bite of food that goes in their mouth. They'll get up in the middle of the night to eat because their body requires this many ounces of protein per 24 hours. They'll set an alarm, get up at 3 in the morning, eat, go back to bed. I mean, it's their religion. It's what they serve, okay? And they're so disciplined because they have that one goal in mind. But I seen it again in the news yesterday where it was a couple that were bodybuilders, and that's what they did for a living because they were sponsored, blah, blah, blah. I mean, he killed her, then killed himself. That happens a lot. Why? Because they are completely undisciplined in every other area of their life. It's a common trait amongst all of us. People who, especially people who take pride in being self-disciplined in specific areas of their life, will almost 100% of the time use those disciplined areas of their life as permits to be very undisciplined in other areas of their life. They literally buy almost like an indulgence, the right to be indulgent in other areas because they've done so well in this other area of their life and being disciplined. So, when it comes to this matter of, this discipline of being careful, little eyes, what you see, little hands, what you do, it's more than just a kid's song. It's going to be hard. And it's going to have to be your primary focus every day. First. It's never as painful to deal with these issues in other people as it is in ourselves. But we tend to think about it exactly the opposite of that. Our biggest issues is everybody else's issues. You know, our biggest problems to deal with are these people that we have to deal with. Wouldn't you agree? What consumes more of your thoughts about how you deal with a child that you have that won't do right, or that's hard to get along with, or that has crazy ideas about everything in the world? Or how much time do you spend thinking about how much you let in to your mind? How your mind and your thoughts and your deeds even have been affected by what you, and myself included, let in what we do. So, what do most people do to those who offend them? They cut them off. They pluck them out and cast them away. But that's specifically not how we're supposed to treat others. Jesus said we should take this almost radical approach to eliminate the things in our own lives that we do as an offense to our own self. See? So why so drastic? Well, because these kinds of offenses, which, what are they really? It's sin. You know, offenses, things that offend, if you don't do something about them immediately, they will take root in your life, in your mind, in your heart, in your desires, and that'll be what you start doing. It'll be what you start serving, really. It'll start to be what controls more of your life than what you think. Sin. You'll be doing things that you call good and not what he calls good, see? Your righteousness. It's sin that we tolerate in our lives. And you know, there are people that in this world that this is just how they live their life. And it's what's going to send them straight to hell someday, thinking that they've got a good handle on everything. They think they've got it figured out. They think they actually have the right way figured out. And they will ride that shutter right straight to hell. It is devastating. It's almost makes you panic thinking about it. And because, you know, why should we do something so drastic? Well, because a lot of people will follow you and do the same thing you do. Is it going to hurt? Yes, of course it's going to hurt. It's not going to be comfortable to pluck out your eye or cut off your hand and throw it from you. But it's something that we really, really, really need to focus on every morning when you get up. Ask the Lord to help you. Ask Him to help you. Ask Him to protect you. And then do things proactively, you know, yourself. To cut that off and cut it out of your life and throw it away. Get it away from you. Met somebody the other day. They don't have a phone, not a smartphone. Everybody looks at people like that nowadays like they're like they got two heads or something. But you want to know what they don't have to deal with? A whole lot of this matter of the eye. They don't got to deal with that. Why? Well, they've plucked it out and cast it from them. It's a really hard thing, but we need to do it. It's something to think about. My biggest problem, deal with it. Amen.